Grab a glass and get out here. We're drinking Larceny Barrel Proof. This goes back to one of my first experiences of the wider whiskey community. It was a Christmas sample exchange that somebody posted on Facebook, a local whiskey Facebook group, and they said, "Hey, who's interested in doing a sample exchange, bourbon wise?" I signed up. I was still very early in my whiskey journey, so I didn't have a ton of interesting bottles. I had a couple low level allocations, Weller Special Reserve, each Taylor Small Batch, but I figured anybody who's in this kind of group probably has already tried those. So it's a little too popular to be super interesting in a sample exchange. So I went out looking for a bottle that might catch the eye of a fellow enthusiast. Something that is popular enough that people know what it is, but also that there's a little bit of niche or variety to it so that it would be worth trying even if you had something similar. So I landed on Larceny. I was looking for either a Larceny or an Elijah Craig, but unfortunately I did not find an Elijah Craig, and that was the year that was C923. So I've got Larceny C923, but I struck out on the Elijah Craig C923, and that was just as I was really getting into it. So I can't imagine if I had been able to get that bottle. That it's a legendary bottle, and we'll talk more about that in the future because I actually traded a sample of the Larceny C923 for a sample of the Elijah Craig C923. This was before it really blew up on YouTube. Um, I'm sure some people who are in the know were already aware of how good the Elijah Craig C923 was, but most of us who weren't super tuned in were still just finding out. I still have some of my sample because I have only tried it a couple times because of how incredible it is. So we'll see more about that in a future video, I'm sure. That experience was something that inspired me to do future Christmas sample exchanges with other groups that I'm a part of. So I've actually ended up organizing a couple sample swaps because that experience was so positive. The guy I traded whiskeys with was great. We had a fun little conversation in the parking lot as we swapped samples, and that first experience is so important. So having a super positive first experience of the wider whiskey community, I think really helped me buy in more and want to find more of that, and that's led me to where I am today. But getting back to the bottle, here we've got Larceny Barrel Proof C923, so it's from a couple years ago. This is the old label. Their new barrel proof batch label is more gold as opposed to the black. I actually prefer this style, but that's another conversation. The batch system, so they have A, B, and C batches for the number of batch that's coming out that year. So A is going to be the first batch, B is the second batch, C is the third batch. Then the first number after that letter is representative of the month in which it was released. So you'll have A1, 2, 5, for example, which would be released in January, and usually it's B5 released in May, and then C9 September. And then the last two numbers are the year. So this one, C923, C, third batch of the year, 9 released in September, 23 released in 2023. Now, depending on what state you're in, you might not see the batches until a couple months later. These were being released in Wisconsin in late November, early December. So that's not quite September, but I'm sure they were sent out from the distillery at that time. Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. It has a wheated mash bill. It is 68% corn, 20% wheat, and 12% malted barley. It's not age stated, but the batches are rumored to be between 6 and 8 years. The alcohol by volume is 63.2% or 126.4 proof. At the time that I bought this was the highest proof bottle I owned. And the proofs will vary a little bit, but they're pretty consistent, 120 to 125. They usually don't vary wildly beyond that. It is not finished, and price-wise, the cheapest I've seen these, sometimes you can find older batches on sale for around $50. Or if it's a new batch, some stores will mark it up as high as $90. I would say try to stick around $65 on this, maybe $70 if you've heard it's a good batch. These usually don't get as much attention as the Elijah Craig's, so they're easier to find and they'll stick around a little bit longer. But depending on your palate, might be a better bottle. It's definitely been more consistent over the last couple years than the Elijah Craig barrel proof batches. And this is, like Elijah Craig, both out of the Heaven Hill distillery. So just a note there. But let's get into this. So note on context. I'm filming this actually right after having filmed last week's video on Maker's Mark 46 cask strength. So I'm going from one high proof wheated bourbon to another. Maybe that was a poor choice on my part, but it's actually a really good point of comparison, because as I'm nosing this, I recommended Larceny as an alternative to the Maker's Mark cask strength if you're looking for more oomph. And just on the nose, the notes are very similar, but there's more oomph actually on specifically the apple notes. There was a hint of apple last week on the Maker's Mark 46 cask strength, and I'm getting a lot more red apple on the Larceny. But back to focusing on today's whiskey. Very inviting. There's a darkness to the nose. There's weight to it. Fullness, I guess. There's caramel. It's a really dark honey. Maybe a little bit of toffee again. Not a ton of baking spices or anything like that. A hint, a fair amount of barrel influence. Like, it doesn't smell young. It smells developed. It smells mature. You know, they weren't rushing this out the door. On some younger whiskeys, you can get some harsh graininess, and I'm not getting any of that on Larceny today. Maybe a hint of mocha, like a really dark chocolate and plum. You know how they'll do dark chocolate and raspberry or blueberry, but it's like dark chocolate and plum, or blackberry, dark chocolate blackberry. That's on there. I really enjoy that. Onto the palate. Now, on the nose, there was very little, if any, ethanol. It always helps. I'm sitting outside, it's aired out, taking my time. So I'm not getting any ethanol on the nose, but you do get the proof on the palate. It shows up. It's not one of those that's drinking below its proof. It's drinking its proof. You feel that, but it's in a way that if you like proof, it's a good proof feeling. It's not all ethanol. It's not drinking crazy hot or anything, but you feel the effect of the proof. Your tongue tingles a little bit. It shows up. But the flavors are a little bit more muted compared to the nose. The flavors are still there, but compared to the nose, they aren't as expressive. Now, there have been times in the past where I've gotten vanilla ice cream, if you'll believe it. I've gotten vanilla ice cream off this palette before. I'm not getting that today, but I am getting, it's staying more safe. It tastes safe in terms of bourbon. Some caramel, some oak, some little touch of honey, a little bit of fruitiness. Actually, very little oak. No, very little heart bitterness, tannicness, I should say. There's not a lot of tannins on here. It's not drying out my mouth. It's less viscous than I would like. It's definitely there. It's not. It doesn't taste thin, but I wish it had a little fuller body. And the finish, I would say the finish is about a medium, and very, just a nice warm Kentucky hug, very classic bourbon finish. But with no, there's nothing wrong with it, you know. Um, Caramel and just more caramel, a little bit of some dark fruit, caramel and dark fruit as it goes down, and you just kind of feel it. Sits with you, even though the flavors move on quicker than I would like. But it's still nice. The nose was really good, so the palate is a bit of a letdown, but it's still I still really like it. So don't get me wrong, very good. Just didn't quite live up to the nose today. So why should you buy this? It's a more approachable way to get into barrel proof because it's a weeder. Weeded whiskeys, weeded bourbons, I find to be, they generally drink a little bit lower than their proof. Today, this one on the palate, you felt the proof, but it wasn't a harsh ethanol effect. So I think it's not a bad bourbon to have as your first cask strength. It's also relatively available in terms of a limited time offering. You have all the different batches that are coming out, and sometimes other distilleries will have a similar style, but it's really hard to find. Larceny is usually relatively easy to find, easier to find than some of the Elijah Craig releases, and a little bit more affordable as well. It's a very refined experience of a wheated bourbon. Sometimes because of the popularity of the category these days, you'll get some wheated bourbons that might be a little young, or the wheat just doesn't mesh well in the mash bill, and you can get some off notes. But you're getting none of that on the Larceny. It's very refined, wheated experience from a legacy distiller, Heaven Hill. They've been in the game for a long time, and it's going to be a solid bottle year in and year out. A little less variation compared to the Elijah Craig's, and really quite quite good. Why you would pass on this bottle? If you already have one or two, unless it's very important to you to collect them all, I wouldn't chase any of the new releases. Even in general, there's no need to, oh, there's a new release, gotta buy it right away. There's no need to fall into any FOMO. There's not a lot of FOMO about this bottle in general. It's not as hyped, but I would say you can pretty confidently wait, see some reviews before you go and buy any batch of this as it comes out. They do carry a higher proof than some of the other wheated whiskeys on the market when you're looking at barrel proof. If you look at Green River, Maker's Mark, even Weller, those all have a lower proof point. They're sitting in the 110 to 115 proof, compared to the 125-ish proof that most Larceny barrel proofs are at. So if proof is a deciding factor for you and you want something a little bit lower but still cask strength, then those other options, if you can find them, are going to be better for you. And actually, let's keep going with the alternatives. So on the high end, if you want the upgrade, it's going to be Weller Full Proof. Weller Full Proof is a little bit lower proof. It's sweeter, a little more. It's fruitier, and I think has more barrel influence. Especially if you like that, might be a better bottle for you. But the problem is that it's much harder to find, and if you do find it, it might get marked up beyond reason. Another option would be the Green River Wheated Full Proof, especially if you like the proof, go with the store picks. Those are fantastic. A lot of them have a very candy sweetness. So if you like the sweetness and you like the proof, Green River Wheated Full Proof picks are great. Their standard shelfer full proof is not going to be as sweet, um, but it's going to be a similar experience, but a little lower proof. Um, Ben Holiday Soft Red Wheat Rickhouse Proof would be another option. Those are a little bit more expensive in the $75 range and definitely have more baking spices. They're not as they don't stay as sweet as some of the other wheated options out there. And then finally, Maker's Mark cask strength, whether it's the 46 or the standard, those are both going to be much lower proof, but maintaining barrel proof, which is great. Um, and if you like French oak, go with the 46. If you don't like French oak, go with the standard. They're cheaper, they're easier to find. That's going to be like the budget comparison for this. And fun fact, if you take a Maker's Mark bottle and set it against next to the Larceny, they actually fit together. They're definitely competitors. Those are some other options for you. So, thank you for listening. Cheers. Go touch grass.